the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday, March 7th. I understand you missed me. I missed you. I missed you guys. Glad to be back, as you can see, back in my studio in Puerto Rico, so that is good. Hopefully, all those technical issues that we had for a couple of days in London are history now, and we can go back to normal. All right, so today we're going to talk about Iran. We're going to basically give you a rundown of where we are, where I think we are, and then I want to focus in on two big strategic problems that I see that shockingly and head-scratchingly, unexplainingly, I don't know what the right word is, the Trump administration does not seem to be prepared for. So we'll talk about two big strategic problems the Trump administration just seems to have dropped the ball on, and where we go from here. But so we'll do both those things. Of course, I will take your questions. You get to shape the show. You ask questions. I answer them on any topic you want. We will have a show tomorrow where we will talk about more news from Iran. I assume will be available tomorrow. But then we'll also talk about a few other issues like Tucker Carlson's latest, Dugin's influence on the American right, and maybe one or two other topics. We'll see what comes up. But certainly, Iran, Dugin, Tucker is part of the show for tomorrow. Probably same time as today, maybe an hour earlier, but no, probably same time as today. So I'll definitely post about that tomorrow. All right. Jonathan, CP Milken, thank you for the sticker. And Armin, $100 sticker. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Armin. And Jacob, thank you for your sticker. Really appreciate the support, guys. Thank you. All right. So let's jump in on where we are on this day. What is it? Day 8, I think, basically of this war. And what have we learned? Well, a lot of what we learned is stuff that at least some of us already knew. We certainly have learned that Iran has no significant military power, that it is and never was a formidable military, power. It was assumed that they had this mighty military force, and be careful, United States, of upsetting this giant. It's a paper tiger. It's not even a tiger. It's not even paper. There's no there. They can lob stupid missiles, and they do have a lot of drones, but that's about it. They have no other military capability, and of course, their ring of fire was destroyed by Israel, so they don't have Syria and the Hezbollah and the Houthis and all these. They have a little bit of Hezbollah and a little bit of the Houthis. The Houthis have still not joined because they're afraid, I think, and Hezbollah did join, and they're probably regretting it because it's gone all the wrong way for them. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So yes, we never had to fear them. This regime should have been taken out decades ago. There's no there. I mean, they should have been the target of American foreign policy after 9/11. So yes, this is we're seeing it on a day-to-day basis that there's nothing there, and so that's the big lesson. We're also seeing the vast superiority of U.S. and Israeli technology and Air Force dominance, just dominance. So right now, Israel and the United States have complete air dominance over Iran. The Iran air defense system has been completely neutralized. It's certainly in the western and central part of Iran. There's very little attempt to go into the eastern part of Iran. Maybe there's still some functioning air defense systems over there, but I doubt it. Israel and the United States now can basically attack any target they want at whatever pace they want with whatever weapon system they want. So, for example, there were days last week that the United States was flying B-52s, those old B-52s, into combat and bombing assets, bombing locations. The B-52 is not stealth. The B-52 is incredibly slow. The B-52 is unbelievably vulnerable to very basic air defense systems. And the fact that the United States felt confident enough to enter the space with a B-52 tells you everything you need to know in terms of the fact that they have dominance, superiority. They basically have nothing to fear when they're flying in there from anything. The Iranian Air Force is non-existent, and the air defense systems incapacitated. So complete air superiority, air dominance. They've also, the United States has used B-2s and B-1s. The difference between B-2s and B-1s, I have learned, is that B-1s are not stealth and B-2s are stealth. So B-2s are stealth. B-2s you use when there is significant air defenses or you're not sure. B-1s are very fast, not like the B-52, but they're not stealth. So they're a challenge for air defense systems, but can be taken out if it's a robust air defense system. They've used both B-1s and B-2s to carry big bombs, and B-52s, big bombs, many cases bunker-busting bombs. They've used those bombs primarily on the large ballistic missile storage facilities and launch pads that the Iranians have tucked into deep, deep, deep tunnels in the mountains. And what these bombs are doing is it's not so much that they're penetrating and blowing up the missiles, is they're basically blocking the entrances. They're blowing up the entrances to the tunnels so that the Iranians can't access all of their ballistic missiles. They have all these ballistic missiles that they produced. They're all in these well-defended, tunnels that nobody can bomb because they're so deep underground. But if you take out the entrance, can't get the missile out, it's useless. It's also the case that those are the platforms where they can launch multiple missiles at the same time versus the mobile launches, which move around, which can launch one missile at a time. Mobile launch is harder to destroy, although Israel and the United States have destroyed most of them. But the static ones outside of these deep, deep tunnels, they're the ones that can launch large quantities. That's what these big bombs are being used for. Those launches, the tunnel openings, and you can see it in the numbers. I mean, it's truly stunning. On day one of the war, the Iranians launched 350 ballistic missiles at Israel and Gulf states countries. Day 2, 175. So exactly half. Day 3, 120. Day 4, 50. Day 5, 40. Day 6, 32. Day 7, 28. And day 8, 15. So we've gone from a barrage of 350 missiles, ballistic missiles, which, a very small percentage of them actually make it, but 350, small percentage, 350, if just, 5% of them make it, that's, let's say 18, that can do a lot of damage. Now that's dropped to 15. Now maybe one a day will drop. Everybody over the last week has been panicking. Oh my God. Gulf states and Israel are running out of interceptors. They're running out of Patriot missiles. They're running out of THAAD missiles. The United States can't keep producing. I mean, generally, the last week has been characterized, and still is, characterized by this pessimism. U.S. can't win. They can't do regime change. We'll get to regime change later. They can't defend the Gulf states. They can't defend Israel. They're going to be overwhelmed by the Iranian missiles. They don't have enough interceptors. They can't produce them. This is a sign of American weakness. I mean, God, they're looking at a different war than I am. The reality is that the United States doesn't need many interceptors because they've destroyed the capacity of the Iranians to launch. Now, if the Iranians were launching 350 every single day and could continue indefinitely, then yeah, the U.S. and its allies would have a problem. But the beauty of this is that if they're only launching 15 a day, interceptors less of an issue. Less of an issue. Got enough interceptors for that. Probably last a long, long, long time, both in the Gulf states and in Israel, on 15 missiles a day. Now, Israel has a problem with the Hezbollah. It has to deal with that as well. But Israel has other capabilities. They have the Iron Dome. They have the laser system to deal with what Hezbollah is doing. But the Iranian ballistic missiles, and some of them really, really fast and very destructive, those are basically being handled by the Patriot systems, the THAAD systems, the Arrow systems, and there are plenty of interceptors. So this pessimism that the mainstream media and so many people online are expressing, it just doesn't make any sense. It's the same people who, before the war, said, oh, the mighty Iranian military will inflict these incredible, thousands of Americans will die. I mean, it's sad that we've got, 6 Americans died, and it's sad that 6 Americans died. But 6 Americans in 8 days of war, where America is dominating the way it is, and you'd think that the media would shift away from its total dominant pessimism and reflect a slightly more realistic, which means optimistic view. Yeah, you're not going to get that, unfortunately. So anyway, missiles way, way, way down. Now, the bigger challenge is right now, not so much for Israel. Israel's not challenged by this, are drones. The reason Israel's not challenged by the drones is it takes a long time for the drones to get to Israel. And that means there's a long time to shoot them down. And you can shoot them down with helicopters, with planes, with lasers, with air defense systems, and the Jordanian Air Force is participating, and others are participating in shooting down the drones heading towards Israel. The challenge for the drones really is for the Gulf states on the eastern side, or the western side of the Gulf, of the Persian Gulf, the eastern side of the Arabian Peninsula. They are very close to Iran, so it takes the drones very little time to get there. They can fly very low. They can evade radar that way. And it's a real challenge for them to detect the drones and to shoot them down. So the drones are a challenge for the Gulf states. And it's also very expensive right now to shoot down the drones. Now, here is an example of the Trump administration's just cluelessness when it comes to strategic thinking. Everybody knows that the Iranians have vast quantities of drones and have a lot of drone productive capacity. Now, we'll see in a minute that even that is overstated. I just overstated it. But everybody knew this. And you would have thought you would have prepared for it with some kind of technological solution to down these drones. Now, I don't think the United States has any laser weapon ready, air defense system ready to deploy. They're still testing them, and they've got them shooting down drones above New Mexico. But I don't think they're ready to deploy them in battle. They need to be quickly. The drone stuff is stuff that we need to really get caught up on, not so much because of Iran, but because of China, a potential conflict with China. But you know who has really, really good anti-drone tech? Our enemy, no, I'm sorry, our friend, supposedly, the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are really good with drones. They know how to shoot down. They have hundreds of drones attacking them every single day. They figured it out. They have cheap ways of taking out vast numbers of drones. You know, a strategic defense department would have talked to Ukrainians before engaging in this war, maybe would have even purchased some of those assets, maybe secretly, and brought them to the Gulf states and deployed them there. Now, right now, the Gulf states themselves are frantically turning to Ukraine to buy drone defense systems, frantically turning to Ukraine to buy drones, offensive drones, so they can attack as well as defend. I mean, this all has come as a shock to everybody, when everybody, the Gulf states should be blamed here too, but the Americans, the ones driving this, the Americans and the Gulf states should have known this in advance and prepared, you would think, and sadly they did not. But even here, there is good news. Because on day one of the war, the Iranians launched 294 drones against primarily the Gulf states, but also Israel. On day two, they launched 541 drones. So they increased the number of drones significantly as their ballistic missiles shrunk in half. But then after day two, they shrink dramatically. So day 3, 200, day 4, 85, day 5, 45, day 6, 38, day 7, 30, day 8, 12. So on day 8, I think that's today, we've had 15 ballistic missiles and 12 drones. Pretty pathetic for this mighty Iranian force. And very manageable. We'll see other ways in which the fact that the Iranians still have drones is problematic. But look, the Israelis and the Americans are destroying drone manufacturing capabilities. They're destroying the bases in which the drones are stored. They destroyed a drone aircraft carrier, a carrier for drones in the Navy. Basically, the United States has destroyed much of the Iranian Navy. Does not exist anymore. So drone launch are down. Note also, in terms of ballistic missiles and drones, that Israel, most of these weapons have not been targeted at Israel. And the main reason is Israel is very good at shooting them down, and Israel is far. It's much more difficult to shoot down either a ballistic missile or a drone if you don't have any time, if it's really, really fast. And that means if it's really, really close. So, for example, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, Dubai is one of them, had 863 drones and missiles targeted at them. Kuwait, 562. Qatar, 162. Bahrain, 129. Israel, only 113. And then Jordan, 40. Cyprus, 5. Oman, 2. Saudi Arabia, 2. And then one, I guess, went to Turkey, and a couple went to Azerbaijan. But very little, relatively speaking, in terms of what one would expect. Now, this is a few days old, so this is earlier in the week. These numbers are all higher, but the general trend is the same. I think many more in Saudi Arabia now, but Israel, a steady, very steady, but low drip, very low quantities of missile shot at Israel. And drones, again, they don't reach Israel. They're not damaging. The drones from Hezbollah in Lebanon are going to do damage to Israel because of the short distance. But again, Israel has the Iron Dome, and it has the laser system. So Israel is well equipped to deal with whatever Hezbollah sends at them. All right, so let's see. So where are we at? Complete oil dominance, huge, humongous, massive reductions in missile and drone attacks. The United States and Israel have, other than continuing to pound any kind of missile facility, drone factories, and bases where they might launch drones and going after mobile launches, they probably hit more than 50% of all the mobile launches that the Iranians have. They shifted about towards the end of the week, and I think I mentioned this, they shifted towards targeting regime installations, particularly those regime installations that are used by forces that the Iranians use to oppress and suppress their own people. And they've been going after this, particularly in Tehran, but also in Isfahan and other places, just pounding these IRGC installations, Barrages and other police stations and things like that, just to try to take out the soldiers and the facilities and the command and control that would suppress an uprising by the people if they rose up against the regime. So that has been happening, and it continues to happen. To some extent, they started shifting the day before yesterday to attacking these kind of installations along the Iraqi border with Iran and and within the Kurdish areas in anticipation of a potential Kurdish uprising, military uprising, and actually incursion by Kurds from Iraq into Iran as boots on the ground. Now, we'll get to that issue in a few minutes about how likely that is and what effect that might have. Let's see. Command and control destroyed. I don't know if you saw the attack on the bunker underneath Khamenei's headquarters, which was attacked the first day, but then the bunker was attacked a few days ago. It's supposedly 50 Israeli aircraft, hundreds of munitions. This is something that goes deep, deep down. How to tell who was killed there? We're not getting a lot of reports of which leaders are killed. We know the president is still alive. We know that this council that is running things, they are still alive. Not clear who else is dead. The Iranians are not disclosing. It is interesting that Khamenei's funeral, really, really important in Islam to have that funeral quickly, has not happened yet. They're afraid. They're afraid that during the funeral, Israel will attack and take out the leadership that attends the funeral. So the funeral is not being held. Anyway, Israel and the United States destroying and undermining the command and control capabilities of the Iranians. Again, they've decapitated much of the leadership, but now they need to keep doing that with the lower levels of leadership and with any kind of, I mean, the reality is that Iran is pretty resilient. It has a system, just like Hamas, just like Hezbollah, they have a system where the decision-making just gets pushed down to lower levels as you decapitate the top. And even if you disrupt command and control, units function independently. And a lot of the argument right now is that a lot of the missiles and drones are being fired not through the command and control, not through leadership, but through independent entities. And today, for example, the president of Iran, not the supreme leader, the president, supreme leader, they have an appointed one, but the president came on and apologized to the Gulf states for all the attacks on them, saying that it was rogue units of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard that were attacking these Gulf states. Now, within an hour, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard said, don't pay any attention to the president. He doesn't know what he's talking about. This has always been the plan. And generally, the president seems to have been marginalized, which is good to see because you're seeing the first cracks in the system. You're seeing the first explicit, out there conflicts among Iranian leadership. And that is a very, very good sign for the future. That is for the potential for what might happen in the days and weeks to come. All right, let's see, what else do I want to say? So we talked about the Kurds. We'll talk more about the Kurds in a minute. All right, one more topic really here, and then I'll get to the two strategic issues that I think are real weaknesses that the Americans have and the Israelis have, but primarily the Americans, because these are things that the Americans would have been responsible for and seem to have defaulted completely on. Israel is dealing with the fact that Hezbollah has entered the fray and is shooting missiles and drones from Lebanon. Now, the numbers are very low as compared to what was feared, before Israel took out Hezbollah a couple of years ago. There was always this fear of thousands of missiles. They at some point, the Hezbollah had 140,000 missiles that they could shoot at Israel. Israel's depleted that dramatically. I have to say, I think that the Israelis are pretty happy with the fact that Hezbollah has joined, because they see it as the ultimate opportunity to take them out and finish them completely and destroy them thoroughly. And indeed, the Lebanese government seems to be cooperating with that idea. The Lebanese government has declared the Hezbollah military wing as illegal. The Lebanese justice minister announced that he's going to request the arrest of Hezbollah's Secretary General, Naim Qassem, which is pretty amazing. This would not be even thought of just a couple of weeks ago. The Lebanese have also basically basically announced that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which has been stationed in Iran, in Lebanon, for decades, really, and runs Hezbollah. They are unwelcome in Lebanon, and unless they leave the country, they will be arrested. And they have all evacuated Lebanon. So Lebanon is becoming a good place, in a place that's anti-Hezbollah. And this is what Israel wants. Israel wants Lebanon to turn against Hezbollah and to ultimately have its own military and ultimately, hopefully, sign a peace deal with Israel where Hezbollah is completely defanged. And I think we're moving slowly in that direction. In the meantime, Israel is occupying land in southern Lebanon to create a buffer zone between the Hezbollah and its civilian population in northern Israel. It is also bombing Hezbollah facilities. About 400,000 plus people have been basically asked to leave their homes. Most of the population of southern Lebanon, south of the Litani, have been asked to go north of the Litani. I think I showed you once, years ago, a map of Lebanon. There's this river that flows through southern Lebanon. And it's kind of a natural, kind of everything south of the Litani is very, very close to Israel. And Israel considers that a security belt and would like to see that demilitarized. So, and has in the past occupied that territory. And so Israel's basically going to make sure that Hezbollah doesn't exist south of the Litani. We'll see what actions it takes to achieve that. But then in Beirut, they basically told the entire neighborhood in South Beirut that is occupied by Shiites, primarily backers of Hezbollah, to leave, to get out of there. They're going to bomb freely, and everybody should get out of there because otherwise they'll be killed. And hundreds of thousands, again, of Lebanese have left. So Israel's been knocking down multi-story buildings every day, basically buildings that have some relation to Hezbollah. They've attacked banks, they've attacked command and control centers, they've attacked bunkers, and the destruction in the south part of Beirut is vast. And then even in the Bekaa Valley, this is in the area closer to the border with Syria, Israelis are evacuating villages and attacking Hezbollah bases and munition depots and missile depots. And this is what Israel wants to do in the next 2 weeks is basically, or in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, basically destroy Hezbollah's military capabilities and then tell the Lebanese, okay, maybe there's some left. You guys are strong enough now to take it over, right? Because the Lebanese are too weak to challenge Hezbollah. Israel wants to make the Lebanese Hezbollah so weak that the Lebanese have the ability to take them on. And that is really what we are waiting for. Yeah. So that is where we are. Let me just one other issue, I guess. The target of this war is regime change. Trump keeps saying he doesn't care what the regime is. It might be a regime of clerics, but they have to be friendly to the United States and to Israel and stop supporting terrorism. I don't think that can be a regime of clerics. He doesn't understand quite the theology that's involved here. But the ultimate goal is regime change. And look, regime change is very, very difficult to achieve from the air. Ultimately, the Iranian people are going to have to take steps to do the regime change. And as I've told you before, we're going to have to see, and we haven't seen yet, and this is very disappointing, and maybe there just hasn't been an opportunity, we're going to have to see some military forces on the Iranian side defect and embrace regime change. Now, I'm going to be interviewing on Monday at 2 p.m. East Coast time, Andrew Fox, who's a military expert from Great Britain. I was going to talk to him about Gaza because he's written a lot about Gaza and was in Gaza and knows a lot about Gaza, the so-called genocide in Gaza. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll also talk about Iran. He has thoughts about Iran. He's more pessimistic than I am about Iran, but he has thoughts about Iran, and particularly what it would take to get regime change in Iran. So we're going to talk to him about that. But I think I'm channeling him when I'm saying we need some military units to switch sides. And we haven't seen it yet, and I'm hoping that over the next few days, as the U.S. and Israel continue just to pound the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, that will change. I think more stuff needs to happen. We'll get to that in a minute, to bring about regime change and to entice the population that might be not quite ready to overthrow the regime, or parts of the population are not quite ready to overthrow the regime. Entice them to do it. And part of the way to entice them to do it is they need to suffer a little bit, suffer the consequence of this war beyond what they've already suffered. And there are a variety of ways you can do that, and I think should be done, that we'll get to. All right. So I'll be talking more in the days to come about what next and where we go from here and how to achieve the regime change. I mean, again, and I'm not going to cover this now, but one of the great, there's a number of big strategic holes that the United States has in this war. We'll talk about two of them in a minute. But the third, and maybe the most important one, is I don't know that they have a plan for regime change. I don't know that we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't know that they thought it through. And it doesn't seem like they've talked a lot to the opposition. Trump doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with the Shah's son. It seems like they're just clueless. I think he's probably getting some bad advice on the CIA in terms of who the opposition is and whether there is an opposition. The CIA is, American intelligence, with all due respect, is good in terms of assets on the ground, but in terms of evaluating the future, in terms of being able to tell relative strength and to tell what could and couldn't happen, or even evaluating Iran's nuclear program, I don't think the American intelligence is very competent or good. They're good with, covert operations. They're not good with anything that requires, let me see, what's the word? Intelligence. Remember, this is the CIA that thought that the Soviet Union in the 1970s was growing faster than the U.S. and it was a real economic competitor to the U.S. This is over and over and over again, over many years, U.S. intelligence has been wrong on so many things. So anyway, they've screwed this up. Somebody needed to have a plan for regime change, and that meant having people on the ground. Right. All right, let's see. All right, so let's talk about a couple of strategic problems that I see with this war effort by the United States in particular, because these are things, again, that the U.S. seems to be responsible for. The first is really this question of regime change, in particular aspect of it. There seemed to have been, towards the end of last week, like this frantic realization that, oh my God, we need boots on the ground. We can't get regime change without boots on the ground. What are we going to do? And almost a panic around this. And then, and there was some even rumors of the possibility of putting American boots on the ground. We'll talk about the one scenario where I think American boots on the ground might be appropriate. But there were some thoughts about boots on the ground. There were rumors about the 82nd Airborne Division maybe getting ready to fight the Middle East and maybe using it, boots on the ground. But then everybody kind of coalesced around this idea of let's get the Kurds to be our boots on the ground. Now, the Kurds are interesting, right? The Kurdish population, it's a minority in the Middle East. The Kurds do not have a state. There are vast numbers of them distributed between Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. They are armed, and over the decades they have been armed by the United States and I suspect by the Israelis. The Kurds have been a thorn in the side of Turkey because they've wanted independence from Turkey. So there are militant groups within Turkey that the Turkish government considers terrorists and has tried to get rid of. And but they are, most of the Kurds in Turkey are peaceful and not seeking independence. But there is a militant group. The Kurds in Iraq have always been fairly militant. And if you remember, the one time Saddam Hussein used what he called chemical weapons, it was against the Kurds in northern Iraq. And then, of course, during the 2003 invasion of Iraq by the United States, the Kurds sided with the Americans. The Kurds were the victims of ISIS. Both the Kurds in Iraq and in Syria were victims of ISIS. And they sided with America in fighting ISIS and landed up to being our #1 ally in defeating ISIS. Kurds did more boots on the ground work to defeat ISIS than anybody, including the Americans. And so the Kurds have also received some kind of autonomy within the Iraqi state. They participate in the Iraqi government in Baghdad, but they have autonomy in the northeast of the country. The Kurds in Iran have sought autonomy for many decades and never received it. They're frustrated. It was from among the Kurds that the first girl, whose name sadly I can't remember, was killed over the not wearing her burqa right, and launched kind of the Girls' Revolution. It was from that part of Iran. So there is a lot of frustration among the Kurds, who are maybe more secular and certainly not particularly happy about being ruled by the mullahs in Tehran. And again, have wanted some kind of autonomy and have not received it. So the idea was, there's a militant faction of Iranian Kurds in Iraq that are well armed. And late last week, the idea was the CIA was arming them and arming the Iranian Kurds. And they were going to invade Iran and basically start fighting the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and the Iranian military, with the idea of distracting them and maybe even pushing all the way to Tehran. But most of the focus, I think, is being on they would distract so that an uprising could happen in Tehran to overthrow the regime. Anyway, and the idea was the Kurds were gonna do this. They were gonna be our boots on the ground for the purpose of regime change. But here's the problem. The problem with that scenario is that the Kurds have been betrayed by the Trump administration over and over and over again, primarily in Syria and in Iraq. In the first Trump administration, there was a famous phone call between Erdogan and Trump, where Erdogan requested that the United States withdraw its troops from the areas where the Kurds were and not intervene as the Turks came into areas in northern Syria and Iraq and wiped out the Kurds. And Trump, with Bolton on the phone with him, basically agreed to Erdogan's demands. More recently, the Syrian regime has attacked the Kurds in northern Syria. And these are Kurds that have been working with the Americans, again, for years, a couple of decades, on killing ISIS. And the United States basically facilitated the surrender of the Kurds to the Syrians and a complete capitulation of the Kurdish enterprise with no autonomy for them. Not to mention the murder, rape, just horrible scenes coming out of the Kurdish areas committed by Syrian soldiers, basically all sanctioned by the United States, by the Trump administration. So Trump has basically stabbed in the back and betrayed the Kurds over and over and over and over again. And now he's asking them for help. Supposedly he was on the phone with two Kurdish leaders trying to get them, to convince them to invade Iran and to be his boots on the ground. Why would they do that when they know that as soon as things shift, as soon as things go differently, as soon as Trump changes his mind, he will quite likely stab them in the back again? This is one of the many problems of having Trump be the president executing what we're doing right now. Nobody can trust him. Nobody knows what he's going to do. Nobody knows what he actually wants. He doesn't know what he wants. So, the Kurds were asking simple questions. Are they being asked to go to Tehran and actually impose regime change? And are they going to be alone? Is the United States going to send in troops as well? What about the possibility that Iran then starts attacking the Kurds in northern Iraq with their drones? They don't have any air defense systems to protect themselves. And these drones could be catastrophic for the Iranians. Are the Americans going to provide any air defense systems? No answer to any of these questions. Who's going to defend the Kurds against whatever the Iranians choose to do? Again, Kurds have been America's proxy force against ISIS for decades. And every single time, the United States has abandoned them and stabbed them in the back. Trump more than anybody else. And of course, everybody remembers that Trump cut a deal with the Taliban. Biden fulfilled that deal and ran from Afghanistan. Well, why won't Trump cut a deal with the Iranians? I mean, does anybody trust him? So the Kurds are hesitant, unsurprising. They want to see a plan. They want guarantees. They want to be protected. They do not trust the Trump administration. So there was a lot of talk last week. It seemed like they were going to invade imminently. They were going to enter into, and they haven't. And not surprising at all. Not surprising at all. So a real, again, failure. A failure to plan in advance, figure this out in advance against this war. Was not a complete surprise to Trump. I mean, he's been planning this for at least a month, maybe more, probably from sometime in January when the protests happened. There was plenty of time to talk about this, to arm the Kurds, to prepare, to put in the right kind of air defense systems, maybe provide them to the Kurds, and to really think through boots on the ground, regime change, what do we want the Kurds to do, and how we get their trust. None of that happened. Okay, second strategic failure. And this one is so stunning that it's hard to really have words to describe it. And that is, it seems, from what we're seeing and from what I'm hearing, it seems the Trump administration had no plan, did not think through the closing of the Straits of Hormuz. Now, I've been talking about this for a long time, including the 12-day war that Israel engaged, and told you the number one weapon the Iranians have against the West and against the world, really, is to close the Hormuz Straits. And it's easy for them to do because they're narrow. And they have probably 1,500 mines, and they have these small boats, and they have submarines, and they have the ability. They have, land to ship missiles, and they have drones. And they can block the Hormuz Straits. They absolutely can. And everybody knew this. This is the number one, bigger risk than ballistic missiles, bigger risk than drones. The number one risk of war with Iran is the long-term closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, unless you thought the war would be a week long and Iran would just capitulate, then it's not a problem. But given that Trump has been saying 4 weeks, maybe longer, that's a problem. 4 weeks without any oil flowing through the Straits of Hormuz is a problem. We're seeing that in the massive spike in oil prices and the decline in stock prices, which makes sense. How you don't have a plan for this, I do not understand. This should have been a big part of what the American military should have thought about. Is how do we secure the Hormuz, the Straits, and how do we get the ships by? Now, right now, the thing that is really blocking the Hormuz Straits is the fact that the ships carry war risk policies, and those are basically being canceled. London-based insurance, London's always at the heart of the maritime insurance, has been from the beginning of maritime insurance. Basically, they've canceled the war risk policies. Now, again, that should have been expected. they're not going to carry policies into a war zone. I mean, they can if they don't know a war is happening, but the war now is happening. Now they can cancel it. And as a consequence of that, oil prices are spiking. You know, we're heading into an election year. Trump is panicking. Gasoline prices are going up, and they'll go up a lot more in the weeks to come, unless this is solved. I mean, just give you a sense of the lack of planning. The United States has a strategic petroleum reserve. In a sense, that strategic petroleum reserve was created specifically for cases like this, to be able to pump into the world market petroleum to lower prices to a reasonable level, not to flood the market with it. It would eviscerate the reserve quickly. You buy oil when oil's cheap, like a few months ago, and then you use the strategic reserve when war causes a dramatic shrinkage in supply. And yet, the Trump administration did not fill up the strategic petroleum reserve. So it's only at 58% capacity. They wasted the months when war with Iran was not science fiction. It was had some probability of likelihood. They could have filled up the strategic reserve. And yet they chose not to. It's mind-boggling, the extent to which this administration didn't think this through, that there's no planning on what to do. Right? Now, there are things you can do right now to lower gas prices. You could start releasing stuff from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. There's an international petroleum reserve that can also start putting oil into the marketplace. You can do away with things like the Jones Act, or at least suspend it temporarily. You can increase domestic oil production, but that takes time, and it's not going to be that big of an impact. But it is stunning that these things have not been really addressed. So what can be done? What can be done? Well, the obvious things to do is to end this war quickly. It's to win quickly. And I actually believe that is possible. But it's going to require things that the United States has avoided doing, and indeed Israel has avoided doing. To win this war quickly is going to require to make it so painful for the Iranian regime and so painful for the Iranian people that it's just not sustainable for them. And notice what has not been hit during this war. It's a unique in the history of war that this has not been done. What has not been hit? Military's been hit, missiles, drones, military industries, headquarters, even police stations. But what has not been hit? What is not off the table? They haven't touched, which would be easy. Iran's infrastructure. It's civilian infrastructure. Now, I know Trump has gone after Putin for hitting Ukraine's civilian infrastructure, which again is stupid. In a war, everything's a target. Imagine. Somebody says regime change without boots on the ground is not possible. Wait and see. I mean, I love it. We have real experts in the House who know exactly what it takes to have regime change. And again, this is media-driven pessimism. The media-driven, it can't be done, it cannot be done. Iran's this powerful thing. We're already seeing cracks in the regime. And you're going to see bigger and bigger cracks. It might take a while. It may take time. But regime change is absolutely possible. And I think could be possible a lot faster if we went after infrastructure. What are the infrastructure? Power. Imagine Tehran with no electricity. Water. Iran is in deep problems with water. Imagine if suddenly you couldn't pump water into Tehran. And ultimately, what about the oil infrastructure? I mean, Iran is still pumping oil. Now, it can't send them out because Hormuz Strait is blocked even for their own ships. But nobody's hit their infrastructure. There's one island off the coast of Iran that has 90% of all the oil exports go off of this one island. It's the facility that loads up all the boats, all the ships that carry oil out of Iran. One island. Hasn't been hit. Israel didn't hit in the 12-day war. Hasn't been hit this war. Nothing. The entire civilian infrastructure of Iran is untouched. Now, Iran, they targeted desalination plant today. Who targeted which desalination plant? I know that the Iranians are targeting Saudi desalination plants. The Iranians are targeting Saudi oil facilities and Kuwaiti oil facilities and UAE oil facilities. And they're even targeting ports and places where LNG and oil is being put on. But the United States and Israel have not targeted a single one of these type of infrastructures in Iran. No, they're letting the Iranians scot-free. You want to make this war faster? You want to win this war faster? Bring them real pain. Bring them real pain. And make it urgent for the civilians who are against this regime, make it urgent for them to act. And promise them that once they replace the regime, you'll come in and help them rebuild. But make them feel the pain. Make them feel the pain. I mean, part of the strategic era of this whole thing is if Trump had let Israel continue the 12 days for another couple of weeks, the Iranian regime would have been already on the brink of, of destruction. The reality is that, that was a massive strategic mistake. Just bombing the nuclear facilities and walking away by Trump. That was the opportunity right there. But anyway, what else can the United States do to get oil out of the Persian Gulf, flowing back into global markets? Well, what the United States has to do is start escorting ships and providing insurance to replace the canceled war risk policies. Now, to do that, to replace the canceled war risk policies, the United States will probably have to have an act of Congress providing the funds to do that. It hasn't done anything like that since World War II, and it would be expensive, but probably worthwhile. And the United States could probably charge premiums from, ship companies. And then it would have to escort these ships using the U.S. Navy. Now, this is dangerous. The Iranians have drones, missiles, mines. They have a lot of ways to inflict pain on the Americans and to inflict pain on the ships coming out of the Hormuz Straits. What do you do about that? Well, a few things. One, you basically tell the Iranians that they have to keep the Straits of Hormuz open and that they better not strike the U.S. Navy as it escorts ships out. And you tell them exactly what the consequence will be. Every ship that is downed by an Iranian missile, an Iranian refinery goes up in smoke. Iran refines, this is not true 20 years ago, but today, most of the petroleum that it uses. Knock out the refineries. Again, haven't been targeted yet. So every ship that goes down, a refinery gets taken out. Not that many refineries in Iran. At some point, they'll have no ability to produce petroleum. No ability to produce petroleum. Again, threaten the civilian infrastructure. I mean, beyond that, threaten the entire Iranian oil sector. Iran is attacking the oil sector in other countries. If you bring down a ship, we'll take out your island. We'll make it impossible for you for decades to be able to export oil. If that doesn't help, we'll take out your oil fields. Now, that could really help. That could really help. It just happened, supposedly, IDF just attacked the Iranian refineries and oil depots. Well, if they did, it's a mistake because they should have waited to use it as a threat to open up the Hormuz Straits. So I haven't seen that yet, but it would be interesting if that actually just happened. Then on top of that, who gets most of the oil coming out of the Hormuz Straits? By the way, Trump has suggested that the United States use the Development Finance Corporation to provide a very, this is quoting Trump, very reasonable price for the insurance, political risk insurance, and guarantee for financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy, traveling through the Gulf. The United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Hormuz Straits as soon as possible. Hasn't happened because it exposes the U.S. Navy. It's a problem. And the U.S. Development Finance Corporation doesn't have enough money. But it's the right approach. It's exactly what needs to be done. But also, at the same time, Iran needs to be threatened. So I'm just reading from here. This has not done the trick. Partly the problem is the DFC's $205 billion liability ceiling does not suffice to cover the sheer number of tankers going through the straits, more than 350 a week in normal times. This could be an expensive scheme, right? So they need a lot more money, and they probably need to go to Congress for that. Now note that almost all of Iran's exported oil, 520 million million barrels, go to China. That's about 15% of Chinese seaborne crude. Iran was second only to Saudi Arabia as China's main supplier, but even Saudi can't supply the Chinese because it has to go through the straits. Another 1.4 billion barrels come from 5 other countries, all the ships through the Straits of Hormuz. In other words, somewhere between 38 to, let me just see where the numbers are, to 48%. Somewhere between 38 to 48% of all the oil that comes into China comes from the Hormuz Strait. That is also true of natural gas. Most of the natural gas that goes to China comes through the Hormuz Straits. So China has a huge incentive to keep the straits open. And I think, done wisely, the Trump administration can leverage that. This is a long shot. But go to China and say, do whatever you have to do to force the Iranians to keep the straits open. We will escort the ships, but you put the political pressure on Iran. I think that's very doable. But here's one more escalatory thing that can be done that would be pretty amazing if it happened. China has at least a couple of ships very close to the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. It has a port in Djibouti where that facilitates the Chinese Navy. Create a coalition of Asian countries that hate each other. China, Japan, India. And tell them that they have to escort the ships out of the Straits of Hormuz. They're the ones with the strongest interest. The U.S. will back them up. The U.S. will support them with air defense systems, with its own military assets. But we want a Chinese ship there. We want a Japanese ship. Japan, by the way, has at least one significant Navy asset in the region, also at a port of Djibouti, that it can deploy. Have the Asians put their ships into the Gulf of Persia and dare the Iranians to down a Chinese ship or a Japanese ship or an Indian ship. So that's what should be done. Threaten Iran credibly, put in play the civilian infrastructure. And by the way, on top of that, just on top of that, basically the United States has already sunk most of the significantly sized Iranian ships. I would basically expend massive resources on bombing the entire coast to destroy whatever small boats, whatever assets they have that can deploy ground-to-ship missiles. Now, some of them are shoulder-held. There's very little you can do there, but take out every military base along the coast of the Persian Gulf on the Iranian side. Just use those B-52s to just drop massive quantities of bombs in this area. Tell the civilian population to evacuate. Tell the civilian population to evacuate the entire coast of the Persian Gulf. If Israel can tell, a significant percentage of the Lebanese population to evacuate, move out, America could do the same with the Iranians. Unless you want to get killed, move away from water, move inland. And then the United States needs to massively bomb the entire coast as to make it unusable to attack. Now, Iran has a number of submarines. The United States has destroyed some, not clear how many. It should make whatever efforts need to be done to make sure that those submarines are not in the Persian Gulf, not anywhere near the Persian Gulf, and if they are, to destroy them. Hopefully the U.S. has those capabilities. Right? It's not hard to bomb the coast of Iran. This is not difficult. The United States has the resources, and Iran is not a very developed country. Again, evacuate the civilian population, tell them to leave, and do it. And then, by the way, if you're going to put troops on the ground, if you're going to put boots on the ground anywhere, I wouldn't put boots on the ground in Tehran. As you'll see, I don't think they're going to be needed. But you should consider, and could consider strategically, putting boots on the ground on the coast, deploying the 82nd Airborne or whatever. I'm not an expert on Americans' military assets. Put boots on the ground along the coast. Basically, make it so that if Iran wants to attack the ships, they have to do it from far. And then, the U.S. Navy is very well equipped with air defense systems to knock those, whatever they send out there, down. And then accept the fact that you might take casualties. Anyway, that's what I would have done. Not impossible, but requires some balls, requires strategy, requires some effort, requires some focus, and requires the willingness to really punish Iran, really punish them, which they need to anyway to end the war quickly. And by the way, again, Japan gets all its oil from there. South Korea gets all its oil from there. China gets all its up to 50% of its oil from there. These are countries that should have a significant vested interest in making sure oil continues to flow. Bring them in as allies. Bring them into the war. Just in terms of in terms of just what do you call it? Guiding the ships out. Guiding the ships out. Don't need much more than that. You don't need anything more than that from them. They don't have to fire a shot. They have to knock stiff stuff down, so defensive posture, but that's it. All right. Taiwan gets 38% of its oil. South Korea, 30%. Japan, 30%. And I think natural gas, the percentage is even much, much higher than that. So all these countries are in big trouble if they don't help. So use that. Trump, use it. This is where the United States could really use some leadership. All right. What else did I want to? I think we're covered. 90% of all the oil that Iran exports goes to China, and it all goes through the Straits. Now, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have pipelines that can get around the Strait of Hormuz, but the capacity is very limited. So they need to ramp up, and they will, I think, ramp up production through those pipelines and ramp up offloading on ports that are away from the Hormuz Straits. But you got to open the Straits to normalize oil markets and to make this. One of the problems that Trump will face is that as oil prices go up, the approval rating for this war will plummet. And then the great risk is political. That is that Trump will get tired of the war. He will be worried about his approval rating. He'll be worried about the elections in November. And he will stop. He will call it a victory and walk away. And that'll be a tragedy because we're so close to actual regime change. We're so close to basically pounding this regime into oblivion that it would be truly tragic to stop partway. And Trump is completely capable of doing that. Completely 100% capable. I think the Israelis are committed. They're willing to run the course, but if Trump tells them stop, they will stop. Russia does not produce enough oil for China. Does not produce enough oil for China. And it's a different quality of oil. China does not have enough refining capacity to deal with heavy Russian oil. What they love about the Gulf oil and Iranian oil is how light it is. China cannot easily replace Gulf oil. Oil is a very different product and requires particular refining capabilities in order to deal with it. China cannot just shift easily to relying only on China and Russia just doesn't have enough of it. Doesn't have enough of it. And if the United States took seriously the sanctions on Russian oil, which they're not right now, it would be very difficult for Chinese companies to buy Russian oil. Not easy. But let's get the Japanese Navy in there. Let's get the Chinese just on this one little issue on our side. That could be interesting. Trump is going to see Xi next month. He could make this a condition of the visit. Pressure on Iran to not attack the ships as the United States escorts them out of the Gulf. That would be what I would do. Plus the bombing and the taking control of the coastline of the Gulf on the Iranian side. All right, we have a ton of questions, and I have a hard stop at some point, so I better get to the questions. Thank you all, really appreciate it. Let me remind you of our sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute is hosting a conference in Porto, in Portugal, in mid-April. You can check it out, aynrand.org/start here, and you can get a discount, 26YBS10 to get a discount on the conference. The number one thinker on all things energy, oil, natural gas, oil markets is Alex Epstein. Right now is a great time to subscribe to his newsletter and get insight in how he thinks, world markets are going to respond and how world markets can react to what is going on. Check him out, alexepstein.substack.com. Hendershotwealth.com/YBS, Hendershot with 2 T's, wealth.com/YBS, for products that can save you a lot of money on your capital gains tax liability. If you've got a lot of capital gains tax liabilities that you haven't paid that yet, or you're going to have in the future, even better, you can reduce them dramatically with some financial engineering. Check out Hendershot, 2Ts, wealth.com/YBS. And finally, Defenders of Capitalism, Michael Williams, defendersofcapitalism.com. Michael Williams, a program to defend capitalism on a moral, practical, economic, political basis, which is fantastic. You might want to bring this into your business or to your Chamber of Commerce or something, some organization that you think would, well, all of them could use Defenders of Capitalism program, but you think would be open to that. Check it out, defendersofcapitalism.com. All right, let's jump in here. Remind you all to support the show on patreon.com. Monthly support, greatly appreciated. Really, really helps. It gives me predictability. $10 and above, you get the podcast version of the show with no ads. $25 and above, you get invited to be on a panel when I do the AMAs, video panel. $250, you get a one-on-one with me once every 3 months. $500 a month, you get one-on-one with me every month. And you get to support the show in a significant way. So please consider patreon.com to become a monthly supporter. Incredibly valuable for the future of the show. All right, let's jump in here. Tyler with 300 Swiss francs. Swiss francs are worth a lot of money these days. I just was in Zurich. So Tyler says, thank you for coming to Zurich and for the great talk. Thank you. I did a talk on the morality of war. It was a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Keep up the great work, Tyler. Tyler, thank you. Really appreciate it. It was good to meet you. I hope to be back in Zurich at some point, give another talk there. The talk, by the way, will go up on my channel at some point. I need to get the link so I can upload it to my channel. But yeah, hopefully we'll have it soon. James, $100. Thank you, James. The Florida House just passed a joint resolution to place a proposed constitutional amendment on November ballot that would abolish property taxes for primary residences. Will DeSantis use this as his platform to run for president rather than bashing immigrants? I doubt it. I doubt it very much. Plus, remember, property taxes are local. They're state taxes. They're not federal taxes. There's no federal property tax. So I don't think he could, as president, abolish property taxes. And look, at the federal level, the problem is not taxation. At the federal level, the problem is government spending. And even at the state level, and I hesitate to say this because some of you will be upset at me, even at the state level, I don't think property taxes are the priority. That is, at the state level, there are other more distortive taxes. And from my understanding, this constitutional amendment, why it's primary residences, and it's got all kinds of other caveats about when it applies and when it doesn't apply. If you're going to have a constitutional amendment, then it should be a ban on all property taxes, commercial, residential, all property taxes. It's just once you start manipulating only residential and only this and only first homes and not second homes and not vacation homes and not. And look, I believe the priority should always be cutting government spending, cutting government involvement, cutting government regulations, cutting government controls, and only then taxes. Now, Florida doesn't have an income tax, so that's good. But I'm sure there are lots of taxes on businesses, for example, that distort businesses that could be cut, made more streamlined, made more simple. And property taxes is not probably the first thing I would cut. And if I did cut it, I would cut it across the board. But look, generally, yeah, cutting taxes is good. Particularly Florida, which does not have a huge deficit, it's good. But I worry about all the loopholes and all the exceptions and all of that rather than a straightforward cut the whole thing. And again, it's not a national agenda. Because you can't nationalize it because the federal government doesn't have property taxes. All right, let's see. Athena, 70 Canadian dollars. She says, I missed you, Yaron. I couldn't stand the war updates from any other source. Thank you for all that you do. I appreciate that, Athena. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the support. And I appreciate you missed me. Yeah, I'm going to be here. I will be traveling again starting Thursday. But I think that while I travel on this trip, I'll be able to do a show every day. Well, except for the days where I'm actually traveling. So that'll be good. So you won't miss out a lot. I'm actually going to Prospera in Honduras, which will be interesting. I'll be reporting to you from the first kind of free private city. So it should be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what that's like, Prospera in Honduras. So that'll be on Thursday. I'll fly there on Thursday, probably do a show on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday I'll do shows. Monday I'm traveling all day, won't be able to do one. Thank you, Athena. All right, not Javage algorithm. All those Enlightenment ideas aren't just going to go away, even if they're rejected in academia. Look at Iran. Much of the population values Enlightenment thinking despite being taught the opposite by their school systems and totalitarian government. Yes, I mean, I think up to a point, I think that's right. And I've said all along that the Enlightenment doesn't just collapse everywhere all at once. But it's certainly eroding in the West, and whatever versions of it, they might come back and they might get eroded. I just expect that you're going to see kind of mixed economies, slow growth, mixed economies of soul, of ideas for decades now. I don't expect the Dark Ages. As I've said, I don't expect the West just to go dark. I don't expect the collapse of the West. I expect slow stagnation over the very long term. And then how we get out of that is going to be interesting. But yes, it is inspiring to see that a little bit of the Enlightenment ideas that are still in the West have inspired people in Iran who have access to the internet and TV and see what life is like, and travel and see what life is like in the West and want to live that way too. And don't want to give up on those freedoms and those liberties and that individualism that is expressed in the way you cut your hair and the clothes you wear and the kind of life that you live. They want that. They want the freedom to be able to live the life that they want and pursue the values they want. And they're willing to fight for it. And good for them. That is the Enlightenment. That is fundamentally the Enlightenment. And it won't go away completely. But it's not an uptick in terms of full understanding of it and a full embrace of it and driving us towards capitalism. That is not happening. All right, Molten Splendor, $50. Thank you, Molten Splendor. You were missed. Thank you. Can't believe I made it 4 days without you. Thanks for all you do always. Really appreciate that. Was it 4 days? Did it really go 4 days? Probably. I don't even know what day is this today. I'm completely jet lagged. So it's Friday, Thursday, Wednesday. Did I not do a show on Tuesday? I thought I did a show on Tuesday. I thought it was just 3 days. But anyway, it felt like 4 days. Whether it was 4 days or not, it felt like 4 days. Thank you, Molten Splendor. I appreciate it. All right, let's see. Some stickers. Roland, thank you for the stickers. More Swiss francs. I appreciate that. Didn't see you in Zurich, though. You didn't take the train over. Let's see. What else do we have? Any other stickers? Yes, Applejack. Thank you for the sticker. And all right. Now I'll have stickers. Lots of questions. Blue Soul, thank you for the sticker. Lots of questions, though, and a lot of dollars. Amin, of course, thank you for the $100. And CP Milken, Jonathan, thank you for the sticker. All right, guys, let's jump into some more questions, and we'll just run down the $20 questions and then move to the $5, $10 questions. Clark Young says, could you do a whole show on what accounts for the slow spread of objectivism? I don't know. I don't know that I have a full show of content to do about this, what accounts for the slow of objectivism. I mean, I'll think about it. I'll think about how much I have to say. I don't think I have a whole show's worth to say about it. I just think it's slow. Everything's intellectual change, real fundamental philosophical change is slow. I just don't think there's any way around that. No magic bullets, no shortcuts, just no way to change the philosophical culture fast. But I'll think about whether I can talk about it more. Liam, leftists claim to care about the working class, but if you ever been around them, they treat working people like trash. They're extremely rude. to waiters, Uber drivers, day laborers. What explains this disconnect? Well, I mean, leftists are usually, intellectuals. They come middle class or rich families. I mean, Marx was a good example. He never worked a day in his life as a laborer, and I think he was pretty dismissive of the working class and treated his maid pretty badly. I think he had an affair with her. I think he even had kids with her. Anyway, Marx was not a nice human being. Most of these people are not nice human beings. They come to leftism, to their class struggle ideas out of resentment, out of guilt, out of fear and out of hatred, rather than out of love, out of positive values. And that's what is expressed. That is, it's not about the working class. It never was about the working class. It's about tearing down the wealthy. And it's about tearing themselves down in the sense of putting themselves down because it's self-hatred. So much of leftism is motivated by self-hatred rather than something positive to be achieved, something beautiful to be brought about. I think much of it is the hatred of self and really the hatred of reality and what's around us. Right? And you can see that starting with Marx. They just don't like people that much. They wish they were a different being. They wish they were ants. Harrison, Recursive Revolution, the song about feedback loops in the Industrial Revolution by Feed Rate Command came out yesterday. And tomorrow you'll be able to hear a rap battle between ChatGPT and Grok, just for fun. All right, check that out. That is on Spotify. Feed Rate Command is the I don't know what it is, the AI music label. Paul, what is your opinion about the unconstitutional aspect of the war since Congress did not declare war? Should the war be condemned because of it? Yes and no. I mean, I said from day one, this is unconstitutional. It was not approved by Congress. And should be condemned as unconstitutional. And at the same time, you can hold two thoughts at the same time. It's unconstitutional. It's wrong for a president to engage in war without getting approval of Congress. And given that no president has really gotten proper approval of Congress to engage in war, really since World War II, it's not surprising. And of all the wars that we've engaged in since World War II, this is one of the more justifiable ones. This one has moral purpose and is essential for the protection of the United States, essential for the United States' self-interest, and therefore you have to support the war while condemning it. You can do both. You can support the war from the perspective of this is essential for American self-defense, and condemn the war from the perspective of it wasn't approved by Congress. And in that sense, you condemn Trump, not the war. You condemn Trump for not getting Congress's approval. And for that matter, for not even making the case to American people, for not really caring what anybody thinks about the war, except this is more of Trump being an emotionalist, which is horrible. And he could really, really, really screw this up, the war. That's the risk of anything. That's the risk of electing Trump. And yet, the war is a just war. The war is a right war in spite of that, all of that. And remember, this is all in the context in which presidents don't ask Congress for approval, and in the context of so much of what presidents have done for the last 100 years has been unconstitutional and should be condemned as such. But sometimes they do something good that's unconstitutional, and you go, yeah, it should be condemned, and it's something good they did. You have to be able to hold more than one thought at a time. Hard sometimes. Non-Savage Algorithm, would you say Ayn Rand had a profound impact on the American business community, or somewhere minor, or somewhere in between? Probably somewhere in between. She had a profound impact on a certain number of individuals and a certain number of people that turned out to be very, very successful and very, very important for American business, particularly in Silicon Valley. But it's hard to tell what would have happened without her. I think American business life would be American business would be a lot less successful without her. So maybe it's profound. I don't know how exactly to measure that. But she had a profound impact. It's not objectivism, that is. It's not they didn't embrace it as a system of philosophy. They embraced her ideas as inspiration. They took it as inspiration for their own productive ability. And that's huge. And we've all benefited from that. Non-average algorithm. Has Trump changed his mind about the Nobel Peace Prize? He'd prefer his legacy to be toppling regimes and being feared by the world. Well, I mean, if he brings regime change to Iran, he might actually deserve the Peace Prize for once. I think he's not changed his mind about it. I think he's given up on it. I think he realizes he's not going to get it, so he might as well succumb to his whims. Michael. If you've really integrated objectivism, you're going to be smarter than most people around you. You have a superpower most people don't know they can tap into. Yes, the more you integrate objectivism, the more you can use objectivism in your life, the more you can see connection between things, the more you can understand the world around you, the more you can understand yourself, the more inspired and inspiring you can be. That's a competitive advantage. There's no question about that. Now, whether that means that you are smarter, I don't know what smart's, depends how you define smart, but you're definitely better at living. And that should show up in a variety of different ways. Eric, I'm going to a law and economics conference this week. I'm assuming there will be a lot of Keynesian types there. Any advice on how to push back or tactfully rock the boat? Well, I mean, law and economics generally tend to be more, they lean free markets, so there will be some free marketers there. If this is a law and economics as a field generally, they are. What am I looking at? All right, so I think the biggest problem with them is lack of principles. They're pragmatists. They're full of cost-benefit analyses, and almost no principles at all. And I think you can push back a little bit. And on what basis is that? Where do you get that from? How did you come up with that? What about this? Why not? What about the principle of property rights? What about? You can push that way, I would say. Push on where they're getting their stuff from, and try to get them to a principle, politely, nicely. DB Rennick, Yaron, your war analysis can't be beat. I hope someone rationally minded, close to Trump administration, listens to your podcast, if such a person exists. Maybe somebody in the Defense Department. That would be cool. I think because that's what's relevant right now. It's the people at the top are not going to get this. They don't care. They're not, it's not for them. But there are people in the Defense Department, I'm sure or in the Pentagon, that want the U.S. to win, that are thinking strategically about these issues. Maybe they've already thought about everything that I say, but maybe I can inspire them. Maybe I'll give them an idea about something else. I don't know. But thank you, DB Renwick. I really appreciate that. Vadim, having serious YBS withdrawal, thank you for coming back. Absolutely. And again, there'll be a show tomorrow, basically same time. Jamie from Canada, do we know who hit the ghost schools in Iran yet? I mean, from everything I've seen, it's likely the U.S. did. It's likely an accident. The ghost school was right next to a strategic location of a Islamic Revolutionary Guard base, and they either targeted it wrongly, thought it was part of the base, or a missile went off and missed the target and hit the school. Either way, it's Iran's fault, right? So Iran is the initiator force in the struggle, and all the victims are their fault. But it's sad, it's tragic that these girls had to suffer. It's sad and tragic that children get killed in war. But it's a cost of war. There's just no way around it. You can't go to war and not expect significant deaths among civilians or among innocents in this case. That's just the cost of war. So it's an accident. It wasn't done on purpose. It appears now to be an American missile. They were bombing the camp next door, right next door. Michael, is giving Trump credit for attacking Iran like giving Hitler credit for attacking the Soviet Union? No, Trump is not Hitler. So no, there was no value in Hitler attacking the Soviet Union. But again, Trump's not Hitler. So those comparisons are not helpful. Trump still represents the United States of America, a free country. So Trump gets credit for making the decision. We'll see if he gets the credit for following through. That is yet to be determined. Michael, can you give an example of empathy as a selfish act? Yeah, of course. I mean, your loved one is going through pain, physical pain. She is your life, your reality, your world. You feel her pain, and you respond in an appropriate way. You respond as if it's you've got the pain. You respond you don't, but you respond in a helpful, understanding, sympathetic way because you're empathetic. And that's a selfish value because the person you're feeling empathy towards is of great selfish value to you. And empathy is one way in which you relate to them. You give them visibility. You give them a sense that you're with them. You are strong with them. You are supportive of them. Clark, is total victory coming? Will we witness Iran transform into a first world Western country in our lifetime? I don't know. I'm not sure that we'll get a total victory. I'm hoping we get victory, but I don't know about total victory. I think there's a chance that we see Iran start in the process of moving towards a Western country, a first world Western country. Whether they achieve it or not is a question. Just the fact, even if we get total victory here, does that mean that in 5 years there's not a counter-revolution, and in 10 years the Islamists don't make a comeback? You'd have to know a lot more about how big of a base the Islamists have and how strong they are to be able to tell. But I do think there's a chance that you will see it transformed in your lifetime. James, can you learn from podcasts about economics and philosophy than you can from universities? Can you learn more from podcasts about economics and philosophy than you can from university? It depends on the podcast and it depends on the universities. You can learn more about philosophy from the Ayn Rand University than you can from podcasts, but you can learn a lot about philosophies from podcasts. And you can learn a lot from universities. I'm sure there's some good universities out there in terms of teaching philosophy, the philosophers to you. And the same is true of economics. You go to George Mason, you'll learn a lot of good economics. You go to some other places, you'll learn good economics. There's some good podcasts, there's some bad podcasts. I don't know which podcast in economics you listen to, so it depends. Harrison, what do you think of Stuxnet? There's a feed rate command song coming out about it in April. Very cool subject matter. I don't know what Stuxnet is. I'm showing my ignorance. But there's more advertising for feed rate command songs on Spotify. All right, Rez. How would we argue against another person who supports an unconstitutional act that we do not support? They could use the fact that our support for this war against us, as we objected to such a thing. I don't tend to argue as a main argument that's unconstitutional. I mean, it is an argument, but not the main argument. My main argument, for example, against tariffs is it's a violation of rights and stupid economics. And oh, by the way, using this particular provision is unconstitutional. But it's still immoral and really bad economics. Everything that you want to argue against that the government does should be argued primarily from the perspective of violates individual rights. Therefore, it's immoral. Because the reality is the Constitution today is, at least in parts of it, are pretty empty. That is, we latch onto fragments of the Constitution to somehow keep us free a little bit. But the Constitution is not the basis of my criticism of 99.9% of what the government does. Basis of my criticism is it's violating rights, it's immoral, and it's usually bad policy, bad economics, bad for the country. What's moral is the practical is the moral. And hey, by the way, 90% of what the government does is unconstitutional. But if you just argued that, you'd be batting your head against the wall because you disagree with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court doesn't think 90% of what the government does is unconstitutional. I think the existence of the Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. But have you ever really argued that as the main reason to object to the... No, Federal Reserve it's immoral for the state to control our money. That's the argument. So our argument needs to be moral and based on a political philosophy, not based on a particular interpretation of the Constitution. Adam, why did our side not have a coherent plan for winning? Why not at least bring together, organize, and prepare the anti-regime factions in advance? Adam, you shock me that you asked this question. Because our side is run by Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. I mean, it's run by morons. Sorry, I know. God. But it is. It's run by people who are not strategic thinkers. And the people within the Pentagon who are strategic thinkers probably opposed the war and weren't inclined to do all that work because they opposed the war. So we don't have an intelligent, strategic, thinking president or, Secretary of Defense or of War or whatever you want to call him. We just don't have it. And the people around Trump are just not strategic. Not strategic. And even Rubio, maybe he's too focused on Latin America, but he's just not that strategic. So that's why. We could have easily. We didn't because they're unthinking. Because they don't plan. Because they go by gut feeling. Jennifer, is it more likely we unalive Khamenei's son before or after he's named supreme leader? I don't know. The latest intelligence I have, which is, I don't know what it's worth exactly, but the latest intelligence I have is that he was injured in one of the attacks, but wasn't killed. I think to the extent that they know where he is, they will try to kill him. But my guess is that the Iranians, I guess now at this point of the war, are smart enough not to be in predictable places. And that's why we haven't heard much about leaders within the Iranian regime dying in the last few days. Because they may be on the road, maybe they're outside of Tehran, maybe they've gone all the way out to eastern Iran. I don't know. But the point is that they're probably scattering. And to the extent that we know where Khamenei's son is, he's already a dead man. And if he hasn't been killed, it's only because we're not sure where he is. Molten Splendor, can you share your opinion on how and if the Kurds might soon be in a leadership position and how they would lead? Oh, as I said, I don't think the Kurds will be in a leadership position. I don't think they want to be in a leadership position. They're a small minority within Iran. They don't want to control Iran. What they'd like is autonomy in their region in northwest Iran. The most you could expect from the Kurds is to distract the Islamic Revolutionary Guard so that they would have to deploy forces to combat the Kurds in northeast Iran. I don't expect them to march on Tehran. I don't expect them to take over the levers of power in Tehran. I don't think that will happen. So what they want is autonomy. What they really want is a Kurdish state that takes chunks of Iran, chunks of Iraq, chunks of Syria, and chunks of Turkey. But that, unfortunately, for the Kurds is not happening. But I think they will fight in their region, for their region. And that'll be a major distraction, and that'll help the cause of the Americans. But it's not going to be the boots on the ground in Tehran that are needed in order to replace this regime. That is going to happen. That is going to have to be Iranians, local Iranians. That's going to have to be, I think, ultimately, it's going to have to be the military. I mean, the whole goal, I think, of the Israelis and the Americans at this point is to weaken the Islamic Revolutionary Guard so much that the military, the opposition figures within the military have the courage to stand up against them. Linda says, did you read that Rama Douaji, the wife of New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani, liked social media posts on Instagram that appeared to celebrate the Hamas-led October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel? I did, and it doesn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me for one iota. You think Mamdani didn't? I'm sure he did. If he didn't like them, I'm sure he felt that sentiment. We all know he's a globalized intifada guy. That was just an occurrence of the global intifada. So none of that surprises me at all. That's who he is. Now, I don't think he's that qua Islamist. I think he's that qua leftist. And I think he suppressed that because, he worried that by having those views, he wouldn't win the election. He might have been right. He might have been wrong. It's not clear. Liam says, someone told me, watch the rich for markets, but watch the middle class for the economy. Any truth to this? I don't even know what that means. It strikes me as a meaningless statement, right? I mean, most of the rich are passive investors in the markets. I don't know what it means to watch them. I don't think they know anything in advance. I don't think they're particularly good in markets unless they're in finance. And I don't know what it means in terms of the middle class and the economy. I really don't know what it means, and I wouldn't go by something like that. Roman says, Qatar stopped all diplomacy with the Islamic dictatorship. Should Qatar teach Europe diplomacy? Why are the Europeans so hesitant in this war? Because they're hesitant. They're hesitant in every war. They're hesitant in life. They don't want to make moral statements. So don't you know people who don't want to make any moral judgments, who never judge anybody, who never take a stand, who never take a radical position? And by the way, I don't trust the Qataris beyond beyond anything. I don't trust them. I don't know what exactly they're doing. I don't know that they're not working with the Iranians on the side. I wouldn't trust them one iota, one bit. Anyway, Europeans are moral relativists, and they refuse to judge. And because they can't judge the Muslim Brotherhood, they can't judge the Iranians, and as a consequence, they land up sitting on fences. Hopper Campbell, you said ICE is a phenomenon we've never seen in American history before, but weren't the Japanese internment camps far worse than what ICE is tasked to do? I mean, maybe, but I'm not sure it is. I mean, first of all, there was a semi-valid reason for the internment camps. There was a war. There was a fear of people spying for the Japanese. It was all initiated by Japan. There was real fear that local Japanese would spy for Japan. I'm not saying it's justified, but there was some national security reason to do it. It was much easier to round them up. They were concentrated in particular places where Japanese lived and worked. They weren't thugs in neighborhoods all over the place. The numbers weren't quite as large. I think it was much simpler, much more localized, much more defined operation than what you're seeing with ICE, which is somewhat open-ended. Hopper, maybe your path is harder because your calling is higher. Again, I don't know what that means. I don't know what my calling is. I don't know what calling is. I don't like, nobody's called me to do anything. Calling is not a good term, certainly not a good objectivist term. So purpose is a good term. Purpose is what the objectivist legitimate term is. Gary, could you see Lebanon and Beirut becoming again the Paris of the Middle East? Yes, I can. And a lot depends on the next few weeks. If we can really neutralize the Hezbollah, wow, look out. Beirut could really flourish. Lebanon could really flourish, particularly, and they're willing to sign a peace agreement with Israel? Yes. Notch average algorithm. Will MAGA turn on Trump over his perceived subservience to Israel? Big chunks of MAGA, no. MAGA is whatever Trump says it is, for most MAGA. Now, there is a faction, the Tucker Carlson, Candace Owen faction, that, that is turning against Trump over this. But what's their options? Who are they going to go with? There's nobody out there that is channeling them other than these influences. Maybe Tucker Carlson gets into politics in order to take advantage of that. I don't know. Now, Savage Algorithm, why are intellectuals yearning for a dark age, both left and right? Well, they don't say they're yearning for a dark age. They don't think they're yearning for a dark age. They think they want an age of success and prosperity. It's just that the dark age is a consequence. But they don't hold it in their mind as, I want a dark ages. They are attracted to ideas because of their religion, because then they can't think. And they can't think about cause and effect. And they can't think about consequences. They, at some edge of their mind, know that this is bad, but they can't really think it through, and they just don't have the capacity, or they have the capacity. They're ignoring that capacity. They're evading that capacity. So it's not like and what they're yearning for is destruction more than anything else, and that comes from hate and fear primarily. Hate and fear, the driving emotions of both the far left and the far right. I like numbers. When Oxford's Mises Society promotes scholarships for young people to attend events at Mises Institute at Auburn, does that count as sanction? I mean, it does, but I give a certain latitude, I think it's latitude, to students, to youth organizations run by students. I think they at least can be assumed to be more ignorant than assumed to be evil, in a sense of having the knowledge to know that this is evil and this is bad. And therefore, I don't have a problem speaking for two student-run, student-based libertarian organization. And even more so in Europe, where they don't always know how bad the Mises Institute is. But, students, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove me wrong. Michael, is Mamdani all talk? Will he not actually do another anything majorly destructive, or will New York City landlords be in some rough times? I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I think he'll do stuff that's destructive. So landlords are in for a rough ride, but I don't think he can get away with a lot because there are property rights and there are courts. So it'll be less harmful than what one would expect given his rhetoric, but more harmful than if he did nothing. So it'll be bad, but not horrific. That is my prediction. Not Savage Algorithm. You said Trump hasn't done anything to move against the welfare state, but they have cut Medicaid and food stamps. They cut Medicaid a little bit. They cut food stamps a little bit, or they changed food stamps and made them, it's not that they cut them, they made them more reliant on work. But these are tiny little changes that have very little impact and don't change any of the budget stuff. And they did it in order to be able to spend money on other things that they wanted. They haven't done anything fundamental and anything substantial about the welfare state. Maybe they've done some minor stuff. It's minor, whatever they've done. Look at the numbers. The sheer amount of money spent on Medicaid and food stamps, I don't think has gone down or is going down. Benjamin, can you elaborate on how you maintain objectivist principles when supporting this war? It seems pragmatic to support regime change by corrupt Trump. I mean, why? I mean, the question is, if there's going to be a regime change, then there's going to be a regime change. Why does it depend whether Trump is corrupt or not? Does that make the freedom of the Iranians any different? Does that make the fact that America will be more secure any different? Trump is corrupt, completely corrupt. More corrupt than any other president, but other presidents were pretty corrupt too. from a constitutional perspective, and yet I still supported them when they did good things. Now, I'm hesitant with Trump because he can screw this up, and I keep telling you, Trump could still screw this up. So I support it as long as Trump doesn't screw it up. He's already, to some extent, screwing it up because, Straits of Hormuz are closed and stuff like that. But no, you can't. I mean, this idea that a president is corrupt, therefore you must oppose everything that they do. I don't understand that. I just don't understand that. I mean, I continue to argue against Trump and continue to argue that he could really screw this up. But if, by chance, because of our military, not because of Trump, it is successful, then, that is a good thing. And it won't change my criticism of Trump. And so, let's say, make this extreme. Iran is about to launch a nuclear weapon towards the United States. And we're like, and Trump is like, okay, I'm gonna go stop them. And we're like, no, you can't do that. You're Trump. We won't let you do it. Because you're corrupt. So you can't do something that'll save American lives. Well, he's doing something that will long-term save American lives. Even if he stopped today, this will have been good. Because it saved American lives. And that's the purpose of government. It's to protect the individual rights of Americans, which means save American lives. So if Trump can do that in a particular context, then maybe even because of the particular nature of altruism and the particular character of Donald Trump, he might be the only one who can do it. I'll even go that far. Then I will support him in this narrow, very, very narrow thing and recognize the harm that might be done as a consequence. Liam, is New York City more like Europe than America? No, because I think America is not that far behind New York City. And I think all of New York New York, is a driven city in a way that no city in Europe is driven like New York. Remo says, what do you think of Zurich? I just love it. It's a pretty city. It's a pretty city. It's very pretty. The people are incredibly friendly. Actually went to a good restaurant too, so food is good. Yeah, I like Zurich. I haven't spent a lot of time there. I'm always in and out quickly, but the time I've spent there, I've enjoyed. Remo, value for value. Thank you, Remo. Appreciate that. Gold. I am an aerospace engineer. I want to study master's in finance. Cool. A master's in finance is a good degree to have. There's a lot of jobs for that. Go to the best university you can get into for getting your master's in finance. That'll give you great job prospects afterwards. Clark, despite Trump's buffoonishness, are you optimistic about Iran's future and radical Islam dissolving because of this military action? I still am. I still think that, yes, despite of Trump, and despite of the lack of strategy and planning and all of that, Iran is so weak, ultimately, that this really could lead to regime change and a significantly improved future for Iran. So I'm still optimistic. Neo, IDF launches on Iranian refineries and oil depots. I have to catch up on the news. I can't do that while I'm doing this. We'll see. Ryan, can you make the regime and IRG feel the pain without doing it to the people too, and get regime change without much damage to the people? I don't know. We'll discover that. But I think some pain to the people is inevitable. No gasoline, for example. Take out the refineries so they can't drive, which will really hurt because trucks won't be able to deliver food. It'll be a problem. But I don't know if you can get regime change without doing that. Power, water, you'd have to decide what are the priorities. But some pain for the people is going to happen. Boris, Yaron, thank you for being a voice of reason in an increasingly irrational world. Your defense of reason and freedom is deeply appreciated. Thank you, Boris. Really appreciate it. Iron Meerkat, for once, I'm going to play the dove. 30,000 plus Iranians have been killed by the regime. They hate it plenty. This time, goodwill among Iranian people is an asset. I still think what I think about Gaza. I mean, that's all true, and yet there's still a significant proportion of the Iranian population probably supports this regime, and they're going to have to be brought to understand what happens if they continue on this route. I don't think you can avoid. War is war. You cannot avoid civilian pain in a war. Otherwise, don't go to war. Rob, after a week of bombardment of Islamic Iran, has the fighting ability of the IRGC and Barrages been degraded so Iranian people can oppose them? I think it's been significantly degraded. Whether the Iranian people can oppose them, I don't know yet. But certainly it's been degraded so that, and I think this is the ultimate goal, at least this would be my goal, is so that the Iranian army can easily oppose them. That's what I think the goal needs to be. Not to degrade the IRGC to the point where unarmed civilians can oppose them, but to degrade them to the point where lightly armed military can depose them. That should be the goal. And I'm not sure we're there yet, but that's where we're heading. I'm okay bombing oil facilities. IRGC gets the revenue anyway. Just not water and power, not this time. Yeah, but oil will mean no cars, no trucks, no delivery of food, no delivery of anything. It'll mean the Iranian people will suffer. Hell Wolf says wrathful Iran is what the world needs, right? Yeah, they need Iran. Wrathful and gentle and considering and principled and uncompromising and dedicated to liberty and freedom. That's what they need. They need Iran. They need a lot of me. Deepo with Diego, Dan and James said anyone who leaves Iran and goes to watch them over at ARCUK, you'll get $5. Dan and James are going to give people $5 for the people who leave my show. I mean, there's no reason to leave my show and go to ARCUK because their shows are like 10 hours long. You can go anytime to their show. Mine are short, condensed, powerful. Their shows go on forever. You can catch them after my show, catch them before my show. Anyway, they're not going to give you $5. There's no way Dan and James are going to give you $5. Cook, abandoning the Kurds was not only disloyal, but would have severe adverse consequences worldwide for any future effort to recruit allies who might later be seen as expendable. This is from John Bolton's book. And that was the first time they were betrayed. That was when they were betrayed in 2019, 18 or 19. They were even betrayed worse last year by Trump. So it's, people never learn. And John Bolton was an exceptional national security advisor, but Trump didn't deserve such a good national security advisor. P. Gupta, absolutely loved Mr. Sunshine. Thanks. Haunting scenes and music. Fast forward to episode 2 to get going after multiple failed starts. Well, you have to do, yes, you have to get through episode 1 and 2 to get into it. But episode 1 is important because it sets the context. But you have to watch it more than once because you have to figure out what's a flashback and what is happening this and who are the characters and when. It's hard. But once you get past it, it becomes easier. Enric, thoughts on Trump demanding political and economic change in Cuba? I think it's good. I think regime change in Cuba is easier than regime change in Iran. And the demand for regime change in Cuba, what are the downsides? No downsides, lots of upsides. Roman, thoughts of Pierre Poilievre seems reasonable. Yeah, I liked him. I was disappointed that he didn't win the Canadian election, but I think that's Trump's fault. He seems like a good conservative, relatively speaking. So I'm favorably inclined. Seems like a free market conservative, relatively. Augustina says, thanks for your work, Yaron. Spending my Saturday brunch money to support you. Oh, now you make me feel bad. I'm causing Augustina not to eat brunch on Saturday. I'm going to feel guilty all weekend for that. Thank you, Augustina, and thank you for all the work you do. You're an inspiration. P. Gupta, were Iranian assembly of experts all killed who elected Khamenei's son? Well, nobody, so first, no, they weren't. It turns out the building was probably, we don't know, but probably mostly empty. Some were killed, but maybe not a majority. They weren't there. Turns out they were using Zoom or something. But nobody's elected Khomeini's son. There is no supreme leader in Iran right now. So while rumors say Khomeini's son is the supreme leader, he is not. There's no proof of that. There's no evidence of that. It's not definitive. There is no supreme leader right now in Iran. They're still waiting for that decision to be made. So no, he was not. They were not mostly killed, and he was not elected. Not average algorithm. When people say life is meaningless, do they mean there's no intrinsic value to life? We're all going to be dead and forgotten. The objectivist view is that life has meaning. We give it for the time we have. Yes. And the meaning of life is to live it. It is in the living. That's the meaning. There's no meaning outside of life. There's no meaning outside of us. There's no meaning that comes from other places. It's like we don't have a calling. Nobody calls us. There's no somebody out there to call us. So it's you give meaning to your life in how you live it, in the values you pursue. That's what gives meaning to your life. And yes, I agree. They say life is meaningless because they view it as intrinsic value, whereas we know it's not intrinsic. It's the value you give it. So, it's the Nietzsche, God is dead, life is meaningless, right? Because there's no outside force to give it meaning. Danielle, I hate to be negative while we're bombing Iran, but if this goes good, I could see the right saying, you see, it wouldn't have happened if Trump wasted time with Congress. It's something we'll have to watch out. Maybe, but the reality is that's not the kind of resolution he would have needed from Congress. He could have done it a month ago, 2 months ago. And it's also the case that whatever happens, the right is going to take credit for it and claim victory. Trump will anyway. That is the downside of anything Trump does successfully, is they'll say, see, only Trump could do that. See, we need a Trump. And that's the danger. That's a consequence of electing Trump. Once you elect Trump, there are lots of downfalls. There are lots of downsides. But then to ignore something good happening, potentially, is to ignore reality. It's something good happening. Lawsome Logic, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate it. $20, I appreciate that. All right. Rez. Right, that was my thought too. Using the Constitution as a primary basis is the error. I agree. Yes. You don't disagree with stuff primarily because it's unconstitutional. The fact that it's unconstitutional is one aspect of what we, from an objectivist perspective, disagree with something on. I don't start with it's unconstitutional. Because so much is unconstitutional. So much. Again, something like 90% of what the government does today is unconstitutional. P. Gupta, will Iranian Kurds work with Pahlavi? Yeah, I think they will, particularly if he's willing to give them autonomy, and I think he's expressed a willingness to do that. Harrison, Stuxnet was probably Israel. Oh, the computer virus designed with extreme precision to target and destroy Iranian uranium centrifuges and nothing else. I remember that. Really powerful. Set back the Iranian nuclear program by years and years and years. Yep. Raymond, why should the government issue shipping insurance right now? Isn't this just a subsidy? Why is this a proper action by the government? I think because oil is a strategic asset. Oil is necessary. A decent price in oil is necessary for national security. Government intervention with regard to it during a war, and only during a war, is relevant. It's the war that has caused the problem. Again, national security. Why escort the ships? That, in a sense, is a military intervention in a civilian thing. It's because of the strategic nature of the issue. And again, the reason the U.S. Navy is as big and as vast and as powerful as it is, its primary function is securing the shipping lanes. This is its job. But yes, this is a subsidy, but it's a subsidy focused on moving cargo that would have moved if not for the war. It's not a subsidy to increase production. It's not a subsidy for anything like that, which has distortive effects. This would not actually distort. This would return to normal. It would be short-lived, only during this emergency, and then it would be gone. On some Israeli YouTube news channels, you recommend other sources. God, my wife listens to Channel 12 and Khan, K-A-N. You can find Channel 12. I think they both broadcast live. I don't listen that much, but she fills me in. I read various Telegram accounts. Amit Segal is pretty good on politics and Israel and what's going on. And then there's a number of others whose name I can't remember. But I follow like 5 different Telegram channels that are pretty reliable now for a few years, and they've been really reliable. Augustino, what do you know about DHS Secretary nominee McWayne Mullen? That's a weird first name. And how do you think he'd perform as head of DHS if confirmed? I don't know that much about it. He's a Trump loyalist from the Senate. Everybody seems to think, from what I've read about him, that he is much more level-headed, that he's smart as compared to Noam, and kind of level-headed, a good organizer. I don't think you'll see a dramatic shift in what the department does. I think you'll see it become a little bit more professional in what it does. It will be less abusive, but maybe more efficient, which I'm not sure I like, the more efficiency. But likely to focus on being efficient and trying to be less abusive. What he'll try to do is position ICE towards the November election as going after criminals, as making your life safer, and less about just random rounding up people, I think. But it's going to be interesting to see how he performs during the confirmation hearings and what he says. I know it seems like a number of Democrats will actually vote for him because they like him. He was a friendly senator. Andrew, welcome back. Iran should have been confronted decades ago. Yes, better late than never. Watching Tucker and other MAGA squeamishness is a side poke. Yes, I'll talk about Tucker tomorrow. He said some amazing things over the last few days, which are fun. John, would it be more likely that an objectivist wins an election under an established party, Republican or Democrat, or could an objectivist party have a chance? When? Now? I don't think either one has a chance. I think the probability of an objectivist party winning is 0. The probability of an objectivist winning an election with an established party depends on where, is very close to 0, but is higher because you get the party affiliation and you get people voting for the party just because they vote for the party rather than you. Rob Tuschinski running in Virginia is going to be interesting because he's as close to an objectivist as we have in running. And he's running as a Democrat, which is interesting because he shares my hostility towards Republicans and Trump. And we'll see how many votes he gets. It'll be interesting. And he's articulate and he's bright in politics. So it'll be interesting what he can do. Charles. Hi, Yaron. Thanks for an interesting evening at Oxford. It was worth the trip down from London. Thank you, Charles. I'm glad you made it out. I'm glad you found it interesting. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. It was good to meet you there. Look forward to meeting you in the future in London, Oxford, or wherever. Come to Porto. You should come to Porto. Harrison, could we possibly make an AI Yaron at some point? I had this company that was going to do it, and they disappeared. I think they went belly up. I think they couldn't raise enough money. So yes, there will be at some point. Neo, contact Mike at the Aristotle Foundation in Canada. Yeah, I know. I've been meaning to interview him for a while. I will at some point. He's very responsive by email and could be a great contact and guest for the show. Yeah, I plan to do that. I've neglected it. I apologize. Lone dissenter, best case scenario is that Iran becomes like Jordan, still authoritarian with some pro-Western alignment and no expansion aspiration. That would be a good thing for the world. It would, but I don't think that's the best case scenario. I think you could have much better than that. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Girls' Revolution. I don't know if you saw the protesters going out there, young people going out there. That is not a population that's going to settle for being Jordan. And then if they are like Jordan, will they oppress their people when their people go onto the streets demanding freedom? I just don't think that's a stable equilibrium. Too many Iranians want to be free for that to be a stable equilibrium. Daniel, this might be the only time I can remember America asserting itself in spite of the regular caveats. It does feel pretty great. Do you think this will help build our self-esteem to an extent? Maybe. I think all of that is undercut by the fact that Trump is doing it, sadly. But maybe it's certainly building up Trump's boastfulness. And that's the danger, that it convinces Trump he's invincible and he should follow his whims in everything. All right, looks like Brian Cross is going to have the final question. Let's see. I had thought Trump could have informed Congress as required, maybe even gotten the votes to start the bombing. Is that required? But he didn't want to imply that he needed to consult Congress on anything. I think that's right. He could have asked Congress, and I said this on a previous show, he could have asked Congress for the permission to attack Iran at his discretion, given the threat they posed to America. And just a vote to give him the discretion in terms of timing to attack Iran, to dismantle their nuclear program, and even in the law, it could have said potentially bring about a regime change. He could have done that. He could have done that a month ago, 2 months ago. He could have done that a year ago. Just giving him the discretion as to timing and urgency. It wouldn't, and I think if he'd done it right and he'd gone to the American people and gone to Congress and navigated Congress, he could have gotten the votes. But yeah, you're right. He didn't want to be in a position where he's going to ask Congress for anything. He doesn't believe in that. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Really, really, really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your weekend. I will see you guys again, same time tomorrow. Tomorrow clocks are switching. Huh. So I'm not sure exactly. It's tomorrow, either 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Probably 1 hour later tomorrow. Probably 3 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. So your clocks are changing, mine are not. So I now become East Coast time as of tomorrow. So it changes all my schedules. It just bamboozles me every time. So probably 3 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow instead of 2 o'clock. All right. Hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to support the Yaron Brook Show on patreon.com. Yaron Brook Show, become a monthly supporter. Oh, we got one more thing. Frank came in. You have been the best, Frank says. A level-headed reporter on the war. Not a time for hysterics. Reading W.S. Jevon's great writer, The Economist. Thank you, Frank. And wow, I mean, that's you're reading some intense content. That's good. That's good. And thank you for the support. $50. That's amazing. Oh, Molten Splendor says, what is the status of AI Yaron? I don't know. I've lost touch with those guys. I need a good. Thanks for reminding me. I'll let you know in the next few weeks. I'll drop them an email and see if they exist. I have a feeling the company's gone belly up because I haven't heard a word. All right. See you tomorrow.